Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the February 24th, 2017 edition of the Intuit Developer Friday Morning Hangout. I'm your host, David Leary. I am Intuit's Small Business Ecosystem Evangelist. You can follow me on Twitter at David Leary. You can follow Intuit Developer at Intuit Dev. Today we have two special guests. Isla and Calvin are here. They're from a new exciting project at Intuit that's been open source. It's called Wasabi. It's used for A/B testing. They're going to do their encore presentation that they did at QuickBooks Connect in October. To continue on with our series of all the QuickBooks Connect developer presentations that we did do last October. So I will introduce those guys here in a moment and let them jump into their presentation. But before that, just a couple of housekeeping things I wanted to let you guys know about. So we are bringing back the Small Business App Showdown. This is going to start very soon. We have announced it. It's going to be $100,000 again, very similar to last year. The only difference is we're catching a full year of eligibility. So if you can join if you've submitted your app and you get on your app on apps.com between August 16th of 2016 through August 15th of 2017, you are eligible for this contest. You have to, but you have to actually sign up for the contest. It's more legally. We just can't give $100,000 unless you say, I want to be in the contest for the $100,000. So you'll have to go to smallbizappshowdown.com and actually enter the contest once your app is eligible to do that. So please remember, get your apps done, your integrations done, get your apps.com integration done, launch on apps.com, and then you'll be eligible for the contest. And that, for those of you that aren't familiar with the contest, we'll take the top 10 finalists to San Jose to pitch in front of accountants, small business owners, and other developers and a panel of judges. And the top app out of the 10 will win $100,000. But just being one of the top 10 is like winning because you get show floor space and you get grouped together with the other winners and you get a lot of eyeballs and attention. So a lot of the people that attended, the finalists, they are really seeing a bang for their buck and they have a lot of exposure that they would not have gotten if they weren't a finalist in the top 10. So definitely want to enter this to move your app to that next level. And the other exciting news is on Saturday, so 8 days, 7 days, depending on how you count, we will be doing the Small Business Hackathon in London. So this is our first hackathon we'll be doing overseas. This is the 4th and 5th of March, so next Saturday and Sunday. We have some great API partners. And again, this is going to be similar to the previous hackathon where you don't have to build on QuickBooks. You can just build anything that solves a small business partner. So we brought in additional API partners like Square and Amazon and Nexmo and Estimote, as well as QuickBooks APIs. So you could we're giving everybody a bunch of tools and just solve small business problems. And that starts the 4th and 5th of March. So if you're in London and you want to be in the hackathon, go to smallbizhack.com and sign up. We have about 200 people have signed up so far. So it should be a decent sized hackathon. It's very exciting. And then the hackathon, after that's done, the very next day, we jump into QuickBooks Connect London. March 6th is the Accountants Day. March 7th is the day for everybody else. So small businesses, developers, and accountants will all attend that on the day two. But as a developer, we will have developer sessions for you. We'll have plenty of open office hours sessions for you. But the real thing is, I think, for your developers is for you to come and meet accountants. That accountant can use your app, roll it out to one client, and maybe 6 months later, roll it out to 45 clients. So you want to really start building those relationships with those accountants. And the way to do that is at shows like QuickBooks Connect. So if you're in the UK, go to quickbooksconnect.com/UK, sign up today to make sure you reserve your seat. If you use code JOIN, JOIN, you can get 30% off your registration. And make sure when you register, you just say you're a developer so we know you're a developer and not a small business owner or an accountant. Perfect. And then the one last small thing is on the developer site, you can see all the events like always for the Hangouts. This is our last one in this series of the QuickBooks Connect encore presentations from last October. So we'll probably go back to having open office hour ones again for a little while. And next, if you'd like to get up, anybody in the States, if you want to get up early, 5 a.m. Pacific time, we'll be having Tristan from Square. He and I will be doing a live hangout from London. So if you guys really want to watch a live hangout from London at 5 a.m. Pacific time next Friday morning, I would love to see you guys there. With that said, I think that's anything on my side. I'm going to stop sharing and flip back over here to my video. And hopefully, can you guys see me, Calvin? Isla, can you guys see me? I think you're on mute.
Yes, we can see you.
Yes, we can see.
Hey guys, welcome. Thank you for coming this morning. If you guys are all set, I'll let you guys share and jump in and tell us a little bit about Wasabi.
All right. Thanks very much, David.
Thank you.
Okay, let's give us a second here while we get it all set up.
Yeah, no problem. I can see your slide. So that's
Perfect.
good.
Okay, so thanks very much, David. And hello, everyone on the Hangout. As mentioned, my name is Calvin. I'm the product manager working on Wasabi. And here with me today is Ilya.
Hi, my name is Ilya Israelevsky, and I'm the engineering manager on Wasabi, Intuit's experimentation platform.
And today what we want to do is really talk a bit about how you would want to go about implementing analytic and optimization tools for your website. Here's our contact information, just in case there's any questions for later on. Our agenda for today really will be to talk about experimentation and how it will improve your product by creating better customer experiences. More specifically, we'll be diving a little bit deeper into A/B testing and the benefits that you gain from using it to test your applications itself. First, we'll discuss what A/B testing is and why it's important. Then we'll discuss some A/B testing tools and the criteria for which you use to go about choosing a tool that best fits your needs. We'll also show an example on how you implement A/B testing using our own tool, Wasabi. And lastly, we'll go through some best practices and different considerations that you should take into account when you're running your A/B test and how you analyze that test itself. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. At Intuit, experimentation is one of the foundations to delivering customer delight. Our founder, Scott Cook, is a huge proponent of A/B testing, and it really permeates our culture. We run thousands of tests annually here at Intuit, and we use these tests to really learn about the customers and discover what really matters to them in order to build that better experience and also to help Intuit and its bottom line. At the end of the day, A/B testing is one of the primary methodologies that we use to do experimentation here at Intuit. As we move forward, there are probably people out there who are wondering, what is an A/B test? And for those folks, an A/B test is really a way of running experiments and performing statistical analysis on those results to determine which experience, A or B, performs better. A/B testing is a very powerful tool that really helps you to measure user behavior. It'll tell you what people do instead of what people say they will do. The result that you get is actually measurable and actionable. And you can easily see that if you decide to measure specific criteria such as an action rate or conversion rate amongst those two buckets. Now, while it is very easy to see which bucket or which experience is better, there is one weakness to A/B testing in that it does not tell you why a user performed an action that they did. And so there are gaps. So as we talk about the why would you go about A/B testing? Well, first off, decision making is actually much simpler now. You don't need to rely on gut instinct, hunches, or even the highest paid person's opinion in the room. You have clear metrics that you can use to identify the winning experience and use that data to roll out that experience to improve your customer experience. You'll also be able to discover those experiences that you wouldn't otherwise come up with a hypothesis for. With those learnings, you can continually learn and improve those customer experiences by accelerating that learning loop and continuing to iterate over and over, quicker and quicker, and incrementally improving your product and your customer's experience. At Intuit, we serve a broad range of financial products. This ranges from consumer tax, small business, Pro Connect, and also consumer finance. Across these product lines, we actually deliver many different applications across web, mobile, tablet, and even desktop. With these broad range of situations, there's a large permutation of use cases that potentially are testable. And in the past, Intuit has used upwards of 15 different A/B testing tools to solve this problem. These range from internally developed tools to third-party commercially available tools. Now, this testing worked out fairly well, but one main problem, especially between the different business units, was that coordination was very difficult and time-consuming. And it was for these reasons that we at Intuit decided to build our own internal tool to really consolidate testing in the company. This tool is called Wasabi. And with Wasabi, what we wanted to do was make sure that our A/B testing platform supported this broad set of use cases that we just previously discussed. We also wanted to make sure that the platform was scalable and really able to support the enterprise needs of Intuit. Additionally, what we've also learned is, as being part of the A/B testing community, we've learned that there's really a gap in terms of having a product out there that was enterprise ready that could provide this testing and broad testing capability for others to use. And because of that, we've actually open sourced Wasabi for the general use. Later on, we'll also be Ilya will be giving an example and demonstrating a few examples on how to perform A/B tests using Wasabi. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about an example here at Intuit on how A/B testing improved some of our products. The example I will use here is one with a first-time use test with QuickBooks Selfemployed. For those of you who don't know, QuickBooks Self-Employed is a product that targets self-employed customers, such as Lyft or Uber drivers. These customers need to track their business versus personal expenses expressly for tax filing purposes. For QuickBooks Self-Employed, the first-time use flow consists of three main steps, and you can see this in the control on the right-hand side of the screen. Those three steps are, first, the user connects their bank accounts so QuickBooks Self-Employed can analyze their transactions. Second, these transactions are then categorized into business or personal expenses. And third, these categorized transactions are then used to estimate your taxes. Now, in this control flow, what folks at the QuickBooks Self-Employed team noticed was that these customers were actually skipping the third and final step, which was building out your tax profile so that you can estimate your taxes. Now, the problem with doing that was when you didn't build out your profile, your estimates would not be as accurate as if you had actually done that. And because of that, the QuickBooks Self-Employed team decided to A/B test this and move that flow into the first step, as you can see in the test column on the left-hand side of the screen, and really push that out and see what the response would be by their customers. So the hypothesis of the team was, first, there would be a significant increase in tax profile completion. They would see a slight increase in categorizing transactions from their financial institution. Also, there would be no change in terms of the number of connections that were being made to their bank or financial institution. And also, there would be no change in recategorization of transactions within the QuickBooks Self-Employed product. With those different experiences developed and also the hypothesis that was created, what the QuickBooks Self-Employed team did was actually utilize Wasabi to roll out this test to their customers. With that new experience deployed, the results eventually came in over time. And if you were to take a look at those results, what you would see, and what the QuickBooks Self-Employed team had seen, was a 20% increase in terms of tax profile completion, which was their primary goal of this test. But also some of the secondary goals secondary performance indicators that they were tracking, such as categorizing transactions in the card, also went up slightly, up 6%. And also there was no change in the number of people connecting to banks, and also no change in the recategorization of transactions as well. Overall, this was a major win for the QuickBooks Self-Employed team, and as a result, they used this A/B test to identify the winner and roll that winning experience out back to the main population. Right now, we'll talk a bit more about understanding the landscape of optimization and analytic tools that are available to you. For folks out there who are a bit confused on how you get started selecting the A/B testing tool and figuring out what works for you, here are a couple of dimensions that you will want to think about. First, your actual product itself. What are you looking to test? Are you looking to do more marketing content, or are you looking to fix and test more in-product changes? That's one of the first questions you should ask yourself, because certain tools, such as third-party tools, they are very good at allowing you to update content and roll those out as different variations. So, take that into consideration as you're looking at these tools. Also, how much engineering is involved to do that work? Do you have a team that can help you integrate the libraries or any of the SDKs necessary to build out your tests? Think about your data. What type of data do you have, and are there compliance laws that you need to comply to, such that if you have data that's pushed out into the cloud, is that allowed there? Think about the different platforms and devices that you want to test. Here at Intuit, desktop software, something that is fairly old, was not very easily tested with a lot of the tools that were commercially available. It wasn't until we developed Wasabi that we could really start testing at a high frequency desktop software. Of course, cost is going to be a huge factor as well. Think about the different costs associated with the licensing fees versus what you may want to do should you decide to build the tool internally, and take those into account. Analytics. Look at the analytics and the out-of-box analytic capabilities that are available from the tools that you're considering, and really think about how that data, how you will use it, and how or if it will provide enough information so that you can learn more about your customers. Make sure that whatever tool you choose, it efficiently uses the traffic that you send to it. You do not want to be sending all customers to a certain test if those customers don't qualify for it. One such example you can think of here at Intuit is with TurboTax. If you want a customer to see a mortgage flow on TurboTax, you obviously want to make sure that that user actually has a mortgage before showing it to them. And so that's some examples and things that you should think about for those tools that you're looking at. Performance is also a major part of an A/B testing tool. Different tools have different latencies, and those latencies will impact potentially the experience that your customer would see. Make sure that that latency is sufficient for the needs of your product. And lastly, ease of use. Your A/B testing tool is only as effective as you are if you're able to use it. If you don't know how to use it, or if folks on your team don't know how to use that tool, well, you're not going to get the maximum benefit that you would otherwise. Talking about the different options that are available out there, they drop into three major buckets. The first bucket here is commercially available software. And if you're really to think about that, what you'll see in that column is the real heavy hitters of the A/B testing world. Optimizely, Adobe Target, SiteSpect. These companies pride themselves on having an A/B testing tool that is very easy to use and requires minimal engineering. There's a WYSIWYG editor that allows people with limited technical knowledge to go in and manually create different variations of tests so that they can easily run and push out tests that they can then use to learn and build faster for their customers. Primarily, these are more marketing page centric, not to say that they don't provide more deeper integrations, but that is their bread and butter. Next, consider open source tools. These are tools such as Intuit's Wasabi, Proctor, or even Facebook's Planout, where these are more developer focused. It requires an engineering team to integrate in some respects back to your product, but the main advantage here is that you own your own data. So compliance is definitely a much easier thing to, that you don't need to worry about for your company. Lastly, you could also go to the route of building a tool in-house. And these tools are very and highly customized for some of the products that you'd be working on. Think about companies such as Netflix and Uber and Airbnb, for which we actually are a part of the A/B testing community. These companies have built very complicated systems to solve their testing needs. Obviously, there's going to be a high cost in terms of maintenance, in terms of building out new functionality. There's also going to be high cost in terms of maintenance of the environment itself. But of course, you get to own your own data, and it really is customized to build and test your products that are running. So, how are we going to implement an A/B test? Before getting into the demo, I want to discuss some of the steps that you want to go about to test. Here at Intuit, we use this 5-step process to really start the A/B testing, and it's really a cycle where you rinse and repeat over and over. Step 1 is really just plan your experiment. Identify what you want to learn, and make sure you're really able to identify and what you want to learn from a successful and unsuccessful test. Step 2, really go out and start developing that feature. So if you're using Wasabi, go ahead and build that feature out via your engineering team. Or if you're using something like an Optimizely or commercial off-the-shelf tool, go ahead and build that in the administrative UI that they provide to you. Step 3, integrate your experience with, in our case, a Wasabi API call or the library of your choice from your tool of choice. Step 4, after you've done that, go ahead and set up your experiment in the tool itself. And then step 5, deploy that test and start tracking your results to see how your variations are performing amongst one another. Now, once you have those results, as I mentioned earlier, go ahead and start the cycle all over again so that you're continually iterating and improving your product and improving the experience for your customers. With that, I'll hand it off to Ilya, who will go through a demo on how to create and run A/B tests using Wasabi.
Great. Thank you, Calvin, for introducing A/B testing as a concept. And now I'd like to jump into a practical example that you can relate to and understand. so that you yourself would be able to create an A/B test and see the results of your variations of experiences that you are testing. What you see here is the Wasabi administrative user interface that allows you as an experiment manager to create, start, modify, as well as track results of your experiment. I log in as an administrator with my login, like a corporate credentials. In our case, it would be Intuit specific corporate credentials. And I would start by creating a brand new experiment. So here, I would just give it a unique experiment name label. But in your case, your name should be more specific, probably, for the type of experiment that you're testing for. Next, I'll select the application that my experiment belongs to. In Wasabi, an application is a concept that allows you to group different experiments so that you can test for a specific domain. As Calvin mentioned, and Intuit, we support applications including TurboTax, QuickBooks, you're familiar with, QuickBooks Self-Employed, Mint, and ProConnect. So all these different applications would have their corresponding experiments running in their specific application. For my example, I'll choose the demo application. And then you want to specify the sampling rate or the percentage of your total customer base that will go through your end user application. And those users who do fall into the percentage rate will be evaluated and assigned into different experiences or recipes, or how we call it within Wasabi, buckets. We typically recommend the sampling rate to be in the range of 10 to 15%, but the actual number would really depend on your number of users that you get into your application, and also how long you're planning to be running your experiment for. And by the way, if you ever get confused about these terms that we have in Wasabi, we have a convenient button called Help, where you can click on each and every field, and it will give you a breakdown and description of what exactly these terms mean. Then it's important to select a good time range of how long you're planning to be running your experiment for. We recommend an experiment to be running for at least a couple of weeks, so that you would get a statistically significant amount of traffic into your experiment. And also, you wouldn't bias your customer base to, for example, only weekday users versus weekend users, or something like that. But the actual range would, of course, again, depend on your application and your customer usage patterns. Then you will specify your hypothesis. What exactly are you trying to test? For example, I'm going to say my hypothesis is that button colors make a difference, right? So this is my hypothesis, that if I put different colors on my buttons, they should actually drive more adoption in my product. Then I would fill out the rest of the details of the experiment, and they're not too many. Here I would start with adding my actual buckets. These are the actual experiences or recipes that you're comparing against each other. Let's say I say this is bucket A, and I give the allocation percentage into this specific bucket. So if I only have an A/B test, so I only have one control group in my default experience and another test like B, then it would be a 50-50% allocation, or it should be. But if you're testing multiple variations, so you effectively have an A, B, C, D, up to Z test, or you could actually have more. So then you would give percentage allocations accordingly. And by the way, don't be confused by the math, because we have a convenient feature to solve that as well. So I can also indicate that it's a control group. So the default experience is that other buckets will be tested against. Then I fill out my description. So maybe this is my green color button. And then we have another field called a bucket payload. And what this is a very convenient developer feature that allows you to specify what exactly you would want to be returned in the response JSON for each and every user assignment API call, so that you can take that string. It can be as simple as a string, or it can be a CSS instruction, or as complicated as a JSON object that you pull out and actually parse and make sense out of, so that you can apply it into your experience. The example here could be just a simple CSS instruction that you would apply into experience for this specific button. And it will also help you avoid that conditional logic within your application of saying, if bucket A, do this, else if bucket B, do that, and so on and so forth. Then I would add the rest of my buckets. Say I have bucket B, and maybe this is an orange button. And by the way, if you ever decide that you need to add more buckets to test more types of experiences, maybe you'll add color blue here that you want to test different variations. And here you'll see this issue that you have all of a sudden 150% of allocation, which doesn't make sense. That's why we have a balanced bucket allocations button that will even out all of your buckets, so that if you don't have to do the math yourself. Let's move on to the next tab called mutual exclusion. What this is a very convenient feature that allows you to resolve potential conflicts between experiments. Let's say you're running multiple experiments on the same web page or on the same screen in your mobile application, and they just happen to be experimenting on the same area on your web page. For example, one experiment might be running and choosing different colors for a banner that you're showing in the header, but the other experiment is experimenting on a search box with how you, for example, return and display results of your search. But the problem is you cannot have both on the same screen, because you either have a banner or you have that search bar. So in this particular case, you would just say, okay, this other experiment which is running will be mutual exclusive to mine, so that if the user is assigned to this other experiment, they won't be assigned to mine, and vice versa. And then we take care of that within Wasabi automatically. Then next very convenient feature is called segmentation. Segmentation is a way to filter out the types of users that you would want to be a part of your experiment. For example, you can say that I want only users who have device called, say, iPhone 7. So they are very trendy users. They use the latest, greatest gadgets out there. And maybe they happen to live in the state of California. So this way, you'll ensure that only this cohort of users will be a part of your experiment. But again, this is an optional feature. You don't have to specify it. If you don't specify it, all the customers who go to your website will be considered into this experiment. But then if you do specify it, then we'll do that work of filtering them out. Next, a feature called pages. What this is more or less a grouping of experiments into kind of a reference point. It could be a web page, or it could be a particular point in your mobile device application. Doesn't matter what it is, but at the end of the day, you would associate your experiment with a particular page. Let's say it's a login page, something very simple. And then as long as you associate other experiments into the same page, you wouldn't need to make n API calls, where n is the number of experiments, to actually figure out what the bucket assignments for each of those experiments are. Instead, you would just make just one API call and say, assign this user into this page, and then we'll automatically return a list of experiment and their corresponding bucket assignments in the response for that particular assignment API call. Now we move on to that last step called API calls. It's a great way to just grab and see how Wasabi APIs work. And in this particular case, these are the most common APIs that you would instrument your application with. You would start with the assignment API. This is where you assign a given user. You would just pass us some unique user ID that's specific to your application. Then we automatically populate the application name as well as the experiment label. And when you just literally copy paste the scroll command, you'll see the bucket assignment for this particular user. Next, there is a record and impression API. What this is once a user has been assigned into a particular bucket, you would want to record the fact that they saw the experience. So you would just say that it's an event and it's an impression event, literally this particular string called impression. And we would start tracking analytical results to figure out which buckets are trending over the others. And then finally, you would record an action. This is the fact that once they saw the experience, the impression, the fact that they actually did something, let's say they clicked on a buy button or they did a search in your search box or whatever that action that's important in your particular experience is, you would record it as this specific event. And then we'll automatically do calculations on our side to determine the training winning experiences. And then finally, this last command is for what we call as batch assignment. This is, as I mentioned, instead of just specifying the particular experiment label, just so that you would need to make n number of calls, instead you can just make one call and assign multiple experiments for this particular user. Let's now take a look of how exactly you would track results of your experiment, and then also instrument your application with Wasabi APIs so that they would interact with Wasabi. Here we have already a predefined experiment which is running called buy button, and it has these two buckets, bucket A and bucket B, and all they do is compare this button colors. One is green and one is orange, and what they're tracking is the number of users who have been assigned into each bucket so far, and then their actions and impressions. So how many of them have actually seen the experience, and then how many of them actually did something once they've been assigned into this particular bucket. And then this actions to impressions ratio is what we call as the action rate. This is what tracks conversion and what we're actually looking for when we are running this test. Here, what you see is a sample application, the end user application that you might integrating with Wasabi. In Intuit's case, it could be a TurboTax application or QuickBooks or QuickBooks Selfemployed and other applications like that. So let's say I'm a QuickBooks user and I come in and I type in my user ID. And the minute that I click login, you as a developer would make this type of very simple RESTful API JSON call, where you would pass as the application name, the experiment label, the label that you saw earlier, and then the user ID that the user passed to us. In this case, this could be their user ID, or username, which you would convert into the specific user ID. But at the end of the day, we would return you the bucket label that the user has been assigned to. In this particular case, they've been assigned to bucket B. And it's a brand new assignment, so the user has never been assigned into this bucket. And by the way, our assignments are sticky. So what that means is if the user logs out from your application after have experienced the particular recipe or bucket they've been assigned to, and comes back in tomorrow, we'll still return exactly the same assignment to them, so that they would have that consistency of experiences. So here you can see that, for example, if I say login again, they would have exactly the same bucket, and it would be an existing assignment. Next, I would go into my experience. So the fact that I saw this experience, and in this case, bucket B corresponds to an orange buy button. But the application in the background would make an recording impressions API call. So again, I would pass my application, experiment label user ID, and the event called impression. And the minute that I click on the buy button, I would record an event called buy clicked to record the fact that this particular user clicked on the button. So here, if I go back to my user administrative UI, I'll see that my bucket assignments should get incremented. In this particular case, the user has been assigned bucket B, so and I should see increments in assignments and actions and impressions. And here I see that now for bucket B, I have 13 assignments instead of 12, and the number of action and impressions has incremented as well. Now, let's say if I will go back and I have another user here, and sometimes it happens that the user gets assigned to the same bucket, but just for demonstration purposes, I want to get a user who sees a different experience. So in this case, I found a user who has been assigned in bucket A. And again, it's a brand new assignment. And when I go back and I click next, now I see a green button. And I, again, record their impression. And maybe I don't click the buy button because by some reason I didn't want to buy it, or I didn't like this particular color. And here, all of a sudden, now I see that the bucket B's action rate is trending by a 5.3 percentage margin. So bucket B is trending so far. But at the end of the day, in order to really make a call of which bucket is the winner, we'll automatically collect the statistics. And when we see that you've collected this statistically significant amount of traffic, we'll mark the given bucket as the winner, because we know that it is statistically significant. Now, here so far I'm calculating the winners based on total actions, and if I had more actions such as search or buy and other actions, you would just see those aggregated action results. But then, depending on your application, what would matter to you is actually taking a look at the more granular results. For example, a specific action that matters to you. So, for example, buy button might be more important to you than the search. So in this case, you would see this matrix of actions to buckets allocations and their specific action rates. So you might do more granular analysis there. Now let's go back to our presentation where we'll quickly dive into the architecture of Wasabi and what you would get if you were, let's say, to adopt it at your own company. What we open sourced with Wasabi is the administrative user interface, that management application that you saw earlier, that allows you to create, start, and track results of your experiments. And it was implemented using AngularJS. And behind the scenes, it's calling Wasabi APIs. In this case, it wasn't those APIs that you saw earlier, which are more end user specific, but rather these are management experiment APIs, such as create an experiment, add buckets, and so on and so forth. And on the right-hand side, you see your end user applications. And this could range from your browser applications, which are like QuickBooks Online, or it could be your desktop applications, for example, TurboTax Desktop that you would physically install on your laptop or desktop. And also they include tablet applications, mobile devices, and even we support backend experiments where you could compare results of algorithms and, for example, sending different financial transactions into categorization algorithms and seeing which ones perform better. Now let's focus on the actual Wasabi web service itself. Of course, we start with a web tier where we take all the API calls and break SSL and things like that. Then you would move into the application tier, which has all that business logic, including segmentation, mutual exclusion, and sampling rate that we've talked about earlier. And then finally, we have this bucket dice roll where we distribute users into the specific buckets, and their allocations are persisted in a very fast key value store called Cassandra. And analytical events are persisted in a MySQL database because it's a relational database and allows us to run aggregation queries and then do these statistical calculations to see which buckets are training and which ones are actually the winners. Now, on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, these are the pluggable components that you might have within your company already. And we just have hooks so that you can easily integrate them with Wasabi. We start with an authentication service, and this could be an LDAP system that you might have already in your company that would allow us to make sure that only employees of your company manage experiments, right? They can create experiments, manage them, and track results. Also, we have a user directory integration that allows you to add other members of your team into a given application so that they could also track results and manage your experiments. And things like metrics and login to make sure that Wasabi is running 24/7, so you can use your favorite metrics and login frameworks. And then on the right-hand side, if you have this, like a big data stack for offline analytical analysis, we support this as well. In our case, we export data through a Kafka queue into a Hadoop and Vertica clusters. But whatever you have within your company, you can use this as well. So later on, we'll give you a link into Wasabi. So if you decide that it's applicable to your company, at this point, I'd like to turn back to Calvin, who will dive into best practices as well as wrap up our presentation.
Thanks, Ilya. So let's talk a little bit about best practices and things that you should consider. The number one thing that you should really think about with A/B testing is just get started. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, and start testing. You can learn from almost all types of tests, so just go out and do it. Also, think about what you'll learn from that failed test. You won't be batting 1,000, and you'll definitely have hypotheses that are both correct and also incorrect. Think about what you'll learn, because a failed test is actually just a learning opportunity that you can then use later on in your A/B tests. Next, be skeptical and don't take those results at face value. Think about the situation and the environment that your test is running in. Think about sources of bias that you may be introducing, intentional or unintentionally. And also think about some of the key metrics that you want to track. You'll be tracking some primary metrics that you'll be looking at, for example, like a conversion for your button test that we discussed earlier. But at the same time, make sure that that test doesn't impact other performance indicators such as retention or any other secondary metrics that you may be thinking about. Next, don't forget about qualitative research as well. A/B testing is great at telling you what your customers did, but it doesn't tell you why. And you'll need to do some qualitative research to really understand why customers think the way they do, and also why they do things on your website or application the way they do it. By getting into that, by understanding the why and understanding your customer, you really be able to come up with better hypotheses that will have bigger impact down the line. And as always, don't stop at one round of experiments. The more you test, the more you learn, and the better your website will get. Finally, what are some takeaways that you should think about if you didn't really pay attention to the rest of this webinar? One, everyone can A/B test. It's not just a marketing thing. It's not just for marketing. You can do it, and it ranges from front end, back end, whatever you can think of, you can pretty much test it nowadays. Also, think about the different A/B testing tools that are out in the market and pick the one that best fits the situation that you and your company are in. Lastly, really take your time to think up your hypothesis and all the pre-experiment work that needs to be done. All that can really help. It can really help you in terms of identifying your customer and also thinking about what best to measure and what best represents their thinking. Lastly, if you're interested in Wasabi after seeing Ilya's demo, feel free to go ahead and go to the link provided here, github.com/intuit/wasabi. And with that, I'll hand it back to David.
Great, thanks, guys. Anybody watching right now that's live, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute and you can ask some questions. And just to clarify with you guys, I have a question myself. So I can implement this in my mobile apps also, not just my web stuff. Okay.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, this is the whole point of Wasabi, that we wanted to make sure that no matter what type of device you're using, whether it's a front end or back end integration, you can do it, because everything is implemented using RESTful APIs, and pretty much every language that you have in the market does have RESTful API integration. It can range from JavaScript to Java to C# to Python and other languages. So as long as you can do that, you can make API calls to Wasabi and just get up and running.
Got it. Can you possibly navigate out to the GitHub repository and just kind of walk people through that folder structure or how you have that set up so that people can, when they get there, they have a little idea of how it's organized?
Absolutely. So this is the Wasabi project on github.com. So you would start by going through the README, and it's very self-explanatory. We go through the main features of Wasabi, what we support, how we do it. Also, you get an idea of how the administrative user interface looks like, what I was showing earlier. And if you're more tech savvy, like an engineer or developer, you can get up and running with Wasabi on your laptop or desktop in about 20 minutes. So just start by going through this little guide. So we have a script called wasabi.sh, where you would do a bootstrap so that it would download all the dependencies, and then actually you would say build and start. So you would actually start Wasabi, and internally we use Docker containers so that dependencies of Wasabi, things like Cassandra and MySQL will be deployed locally as Docker containers, as well as the Wasabi application and the admin user interface. So everything that you saw earlier, you can just see on your laptop right away. And then we have examples of how you would make API calls to Wasabi to assign users into different buckets. And then there are a number of other ways to get more technical details, such as JavaDoc and Wasabi UI, and then get access to all these different backend databases. And if you want to actually contribute to Wasabi, we would really appreciate if you do that. So you can actually fork the Wasabi code base into your GitHub internal GitHub repository, so to user-specific GitHub repository, and then do contributions, and then create a pull request, which the Wasabi team will review, and we'll be happy to actually incorporate your changes. And we already had several developers who have been contributing and actually making Wasabi a lot better. Then we have a nice user guide that will just walk you through the different features of Wasabi, how you would go about doing development with Wasabi, and just all the fine-grained details as well. So it's just another more comprehensive guide if you have any questions. Then finally, if you do have any questions for us directly, feel free to get on to Gitter. So this is github.com's chat feature that where you can just post questions to us, and then we'll come back to you and answer any questions that you might have.
That's great. Thanks, guys. This is exciting, especially for people that, I know a lot of our developers, they're early on in their progress still, right, in their journey, and some of them are not testing as much as they should be, and so this would be a good first start for them. I'd love for us to get this built into the developer site for apps.com even, right? We have apps.com, and right now developers cannot do any A/B testing on that. They don't know if that tagline worked or if those screenshots worked. I know that unless you just do a lot of manual tracking, I think early on, like T-Sheets, they changed their apps.com app card every 3 weeks for like a year, and just paid it. We kind of did some things extreme, some things less extreme, try to map their testing that way. But it'd be ideal if they could, we could give developers a chance to have two app cards. That'd be great. I think going forward, if we could eventually get that to the apps.com level, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Absolutely.
Perfect. I don't have any more questions. I don't know if I think Jonathan's on the line. Nihal, any questions, guys? Jonathan?
Not for me, but thanks for the presentation. It looks really interesting.
Are you doing any A/B testing, Jonathan, on your app or in your landing page, or anywhere during your sales funnel or anything?
We've done it on some email campaigns, but not in the app itself. I know you guys are constantly. Every time I go to the website, go to QBO, it's things move around. So I know that you're doing a lot of testing. Where's the accounts? Where's the chart of accounts today? That's the.
Well,
you have to be careful about that
feature. You actually have a more persistent, consistent experience. So that's why once we assign you, we actually preserve that. But yeah, the idea is that different customers could see different ways of user interface, for example, and then we see which ones work the best. So hopefully, at the end of the day, everybody wins because the most user-friendly experience would take over.
Right.
But yes, and it's also, by the way, it's a common practice. You see like Amazon or other systems online, they do a lot of A/B testing, and this is why they drive a lot of customer engagement. So different people might see their Amazon.com differently, but at the end of the day, we all benefit because the best experiences win, and then customers vote like that.
Right now, we're doing a lot of testing, and I'm creating a lot of trials. And I noticed that in Canada and the USA, the mobile number is not a requirement when you create a trial, but in Australia it is. And I mean, it's better for us because I can do forwarding, and all the other developers can get the authorization code if they want to connect and disconnect. But with a cell phone, it's a little more difficult. But is that a result of some testing that you did, that you found out that people in Australia are more happy to give you the cell phone number? Or
Oh, is this for the multi-factor authentication?
Yeah.
When you sign in? Oh.
It's required in Australia, but not in Canada or US. It's interesting.
I did not know that.
I think that's a great question. So, Ilya and myself, we aren't necessarily part of the QuickBooks team, permanent QuickBooks team, I guess you could say. So this is something that, we would probably need to redirect to the right folks, and I think David might be able to help with that.
Yeah, because it might even be a level higher than even QuickBooks, because that's like the Intuit level authentication, and so it could be, there could be, they could have maybe in the AU region we're rolling out the next version of it, right? Because sometimes we'll do rollouts like that, which is kind of like an experiment, right? At the same time, when you roll it out to one region, not all the regions. So yeah, I'll find out, Jonathan. I mean, you'll probably be here next week or the week after. Let's start figuring out why that's different in that other region.
I had another question. Where do you put these videos?
These are all on YouTube. So if you just search if you search Intuit Developer Friday Morning Hangout on YouTube, if you search for Intuit Developer, I think if you search for me, like you might be able to find them. They're pretty much, they're out there for sure. And then we try to include them in all our newsletters that we send out. And then, we try to, the really interesting ones, sometimes we'll even bubble up to the front page of the developer site. If we really feel like, hey, everybody needs to watch this video, it's important, we'll try to bubble up. But so they definitely are out there and they've been, I think now I'm at 150 Friday Morning Hangout videos that have uploaded. So they're definitely up there. Cool, that's a good question. I might have to start including that every week, just let people know that they can watch them after the fact. Cool. With that said, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you, Isla and Calvin. I do appreciate you guys coming in and doing this. Hopefully you guys have a bigger, better presentation possibly for QuickBooks Connect in the fall. Maybe there's, if it's not A/B testing or Wasabi related, but maybe there's some other technical thing you pull together. I think Isla's got a lot of technical prowess. Maybe he's not fully putting out there yet. It'd be great to see another developer presentation from you guys.
Definitely, yeah.
Awesome. Have a good day, guys, and have a good week, everybody. Next Friday morning at 5 a.m. Pacific time in the States, I will be doing a live QuickBooks Connect. I'm sorry, not QuickBooks Connect. Intuit Developer Friday Morning Hangout in London at our Small Business Hackathon. So if you want to learn about Square APIs, tune in at 5 a.m. Pacific time next Friday morning. If not, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
All right.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.